The Struggling Artist. Introduction to the Artist. Marcus Ellis stood in his small, dimly lit apartment, staring at a canvas that captured his heart and soul. The vibrant streaks of color intertwined like the melodies of a jazz solo, chaotic yet harmonious. Each stroke told a story of survival, resilience, and hope, a reflection of his journey. Born and raised in the underserved neighborhoods of Chicago, Marcus grew up surrounded by challenges that would have crushed others. His mother, a single parent, worked long hours as a nurse's aide to keep food on the table. Marcus found solace in sketching on scraps of paper, old magazines, and even walls, using his creativity to block out the hardships of his environment. Teachers quickly noticed his natural talent, and one in particular, Ms. Grace Thompson, encouraged him to pursue art seriously. She became his first mentor, guiding him through the basics of color theory and composition. However, Marcus's ambitions extended far beyond the modest boundaries of his community. He dreamed of his art hanging in prestigious galleries, being admired by collectors and critics. His goal wasn't just personal success, it was to show that stories like his deserved to be told and celebrated on the world stage. The setback. The journey was anything but easy. The art world, often controlled by the wealthy elite, was unkind to someone like Marcus. He saved every penny to create his pieces and attend gallery openings, but despite his efforts, he was met with closed doors and dismissive attitudes. Rejection letters piled up on his desk, each one a painful reminder of the systemic barriers he faced. One pivotal evening, Marcus attended an open call at the prestigious Livingston Gallery, owned by Howard Livingston. Howard, a man in his mid-50s, with slicked-back silver hair and a tailored suit, was the epitome of privilege and arrogance. His gallery was known for showcasing refined works, often catering to wealthy patrons with predictable tastes. As Marcus nervously set up his pieces for review, he overheard whispers from other applicants, some marveling at his work, others skeptical of its unconventional style. When Howard finally approached, his gaze was cold and calculating. "What's this supposed to be?" Howard asked, gesturing to Marcus's main piece, Fragmented Freedom, a stunning abstract portrayal of societal struggles. Marcus cleared his throat, trying to hide his nervousness. "It's a reflection of the human experience, a mix of chaos and hope." Howard smirked, his voice dripping with condescension. "Chaos? That's one way to put it. This isn't art, it's a mess. Who would pay good money for this?" The room fell silent. Other artists stopped what they were doing, their gazes shifting between Marcus and Howard. Marcus felt the weight of every eye in the room. I believe it has value," Marcus stammered, standing his ground. "Art doesn't have to be conventional to be meaningful." Howard laughed, a cruel, dismissive sound that echoed through the gallery. "Listen, kid. This isn't some street corner. People here want sophistication, not whatever this is. Maybe stick to whatever it is you do and leave the real art to professionals." Key moment. Humiliated but refusing to show weakness, Marcus packed up his pieces and left the gallery. As he walked through the chilly night, clutching his paintings, tears stung his eyes. It wasn't just about the rejection, it was the blatant disrespect, the way Howard belittled his identity, his perspective, and his talent. Marcus paused on a bench near a bustling downtown street, staring at the city lights. He thought about giving up, about returning to a predictable but uninspired life. But then he remembered his mother's sacrifices, Ms. Thompson's unwavering faith in his potential, and the kids in his neighborhood who looked up to him. "This isn't the end," Marcus muttered to himself, wiping his tears. "This is just the beginning." He pulled out his sketchpad and began drawing, letting his emotions guide him. In that moment of despair, he resolved to prove his worth, not to Howard, but to himself and everyone who doubted him. Marcus didn't know it yet, but the seeds of his eventual triumph were already taking root. The unexpected breakthrough. Chance encounter. The air inside the small community center was electric, a stark contrast to the worn-out walls and mismatched lighting. Local artists from across the neighborhood had gathered to showcase their work, a grassroots event designed to celebrate creativity and culture. For Marcus Ellis, it was yet another opportunity to put his work in front of an audience, albeit a smaller, less prestigious one. His pieces were displayed on an unassuming fold-out table at the back of the room. The centerpiece of his collection, Fragmented Freedom, took center stage, flanked by smaller but equally poignant works. Unlike the sleek galleries of downtown Chicago, the atmosphere here was warm, bustling, and filled with genuine enthusiasm. People wandered from table to table, discussing art over cheap wine and crackers. Marcus stood by his display, nerves jangling, but he smiled when a young boy pointed at one of his works and asked his father, "What does it mean?" It was moments like these that reminded Marcus of why he persisted. Then she arrived. Emily Carter was unlike anyone else in the room. Clad in a tailored beige coat with a silk scarf casually draped around her neck, she exuded elegance and confidence. Her salt and pepper hair was neatly styled, and her sharp blue eyes scanned the room with practiced precision. Emily was a renowned art collector and philanthropist, though Marcus had no idea who she was at first. She stopped in front of his table, her gaze immediately drawn to Fragmented Freedom. Her head tilted slightly as she examined the intricate interplay of colors and textures. Marcus felt her presence before he saw her, and when he turned to greet her, his usual nerves kicked in. "Good evening," Emily said, her voice calm but commanding. "This piece, it's extraordinary. Tell me about it." Marcus hesitated for a moment, unsure how to respond to such an unexpected compliment. Then, he began explaining the inspiration behind the painting, the struggles of his community, the fight for justice, and the enduring hope that drove him forward. He spoke not just about the art but about the story behind it, the emotions embedded in every brushstroke. Emily listened intently, her expression unwavering. When Marcus finished, she smiled, a genuine warmth that took him by surprise. "I'll take this one," she said, pointing to Fragmented Freedom. "And these two as well." She gestured toward two smaller pieces, Urban Symphony and Resilience in Shadows. Marcus blinked, stunned. You want to buy them?" "Yes," Emily replied matter-of-factly. "Your work has something many artists lack, soul. It's authentic, and that's rare." The transaction was quick, but the impact was profound. Emily handed Marcus a business card before leaving, her parting words echoing in his ears. "I'll be in touch. There are people who need to see this." Viral sensation. True to her word, Emily didn't just admire Marcus's art, she championed it. Within days of purchasing his pieces, she shared photos of them on her Instagram account, which boasted a following of over 1 million art enthusiasts. Accompanying the images was a heartfelt caption. "Discovered an incredible talent at a local art show. Marcus Ellis's work is raw, emotional, and profoundly moving. This is the future of art. Watch this space." The post quickly gained traction. Comments poured in, praising Marcus's work and demanding to know more about the artist behind it. Influential art critics began sharing Emily's post, and within a week, Marcus found himself inundated with messages from people eager to see more of his creations. But the attention wasn't confined to social media. Local news outlets picked up the story of a struggling artist gaining recognition through sheer talent and determination. Interviews followed, and Marcus's name became synonymous with the rising tide of diverse voices reshaping the art world. What surprised Marcus most was how his work resonated with people. Strangers from all walks of life shared how his pieces spoke to their own experiences, their own struggles. For the first time, he realized the true power of art, not just as self-expression but as a bridge connecting human stories. New opportunities. One afternoon, as Marcus worked in his apartment, his phone buzzed with an email notification. The subject line read, "Invitation to the Chicago International Art Fair." His heart raced as he read the message. The email was from Karen Walker, the director of the fair, one of the most prestigious art events in the country. Karen had seen Emily's post and was captivated by Marcus's work. She invited him to showcase his pieces in a special exhibit highlighting emerging artists. Marcus's hands trembled as he called Emily to share the news. Her laughter on the other end of the line was joyous. I told you, Marcus. This is just the beginning. Preparing for the fair was a whirlwind of activity. Marcus poured every ounce of energy into creating new works, each piece more ambitious than the last. Emily connected him with a professional art agent, who helped him navigate contracts and logistics. For the first time, Marcus felt like he belonged in the art world, not as an outsider begging for scraps, but as a creator whose voice mattered. The fair itself was a transformative experience. Marcus's exhibit was strategically placed near the main entrance, ensuring maximum visibility. His booth, adorned with his vibrant, thought-provoking pieces, drew crowds almost immediately. Art collectors, gallery owners, and critics mingled, each one eager to learn about the artist behind the work. One of the highlights of the event was when Marcus gave a brief talk about his journey. Standing in front of an audience that included some of the most influential people in the industry, he shared his story, the struggles, the rejections, and the determination that brought him to this moment. His authenticity struck a chord with everyone in the room, earning him a standing ovation. By the end of the fair, Marcus had sold multiple pieces and secured invitations to exhibit in galleries across the country. More importantly, he had solidified his place as a rising star in the art world. As Marcus packed up his booth on the final day, he paused to reflect. The journey had been arduous, filled with moments of doubt and despair. But now, standing at the threshold of success, he felt a deep sense of fulfillment. His art, once dismissed and belittled, was now celebrated and revered. The road ahead was still uncertain, but one thing was clear: Marcus Ellis was no longer just a struggling artist. He was a force to be reckoned with, a voice that refused to be silenced. And this was only the beginning. The rise to stardom. Skyrocketing success. In the weeks following the Chicago International Art Fair, Marcus Ellis's life transformed in ways he had never imagined. His name became synonymous with raw, powerful, and socially conscious art. Publications like Artscene magazine and the Chicago Tribune ran features on his work, dubbing him the voice of a new generation in art. His paintings, once ignored, were now coveted by collectors, with bidding wars erupting over pieces that only months earlier had been ridiculed. Marcus found himself navigating a world that had once shut its doors in his face. Prestigious galleries sent invitations daily, eager to feature his work. Even the most exclusive art auctions began requesting his pieces. What struck him most was the irony: some of these were the same galleries that had rejected him outright, including Howard Livingston's. Howard's gallery reached out multiple times, their emails filled with flattering language and promises of lucrative deals. Marcus chuckled bitterly at the hypocrisy. It wasn't long ago that Howard had mocked him publicly, and now the man was practically begging for a chance to showcase his work. The sting of that earlier humiliation lingered, but Marcus knew he held the upper hand now. Turning the tables. Navigating this newfound attention, Marcus understood he needed professional guidance. Emily Carter, ever supportive, connected him with Robert Hayes, a highly regarded art agent known for representing socially impactful artists. Robert was sharp, shrewd, and unapologetically protective of Marcus's interests. Their first meeting was a turning point. Sitting across from Marcus in a sleek office lined with abstract art, Robert laid out a strategy for his career. "Marcus, you have something unique," Robert began. "Your story, your perspective, your art, it's not just valuable, it's vital. But we need to ensure that your work is represented by people and institutions that align with your values. That means being selective. You don't owe anyone anything, especially not those who disrespected you." Marcus nodded, feeling a mix of relief and determination. Together, they crafted a plan that prioritized authenticity over quick gains. Marcus rejected offers from galleries with histories of exclusion or discrimination, even when the financial rewards were tempting. He chose instead to collaborate with independent galleries and organizations that championed diversity and inclusion. His decision sent ripples through the art world. Critics praised his integrity, and emerging artists looked up to him as a trailblazer. Marcus wasn't just making a name for himself, he was reshaping the narrative around what success in art could look like. Inner conflict. Despite his external triumphs, Marcus found himself grappling with an internal struggle. Success brought validation, but it also dredged up memories of the people who had doubted him, dismissed him, or outright disrespected him. Chief among them was Howard Livingston. The invitations from Howard's gallery became increasingly persistent. One day, Robert handed Marcus a letter from Howard himself, printed on embossed stationery. "Dear Mr. Ellis," it began. "I hope this message finds you well. I want to personally apologize for any misunderstanding or miscommunication during our initial interactions. Your work is truly remarkable, and I would be honored to showcase it at Livingston Gallery. Please let us know how we can make this collaboration happen." Marcus crumpled the letter without finishing it. The audacity of Howard to frame his cruelty as a misunderstanding was infuriating. But as days turned into weeks, Marcus couldn't shake the weight of the past. He wrestled with questions of forgiveness and revenge. Should he confront Howard and demand accountability? Or should he let his success serve as the ultimate rebuke? Late one night, Marcus sat in his studio, staring at fragmented freedom, the piece Howard had once mocked. The vibrant colors seemed to pulse under the dim light, reminding Marcus of the pain and resilience that had fueled its creation. His mother's words echoed in his mind, "Don't let bitterness define you. Let your actions speak louder." Marcus sighed, torn between his desire for closure and his commitment to moving forward. He knew he couldn't ignore the past, but he also refused to let it consume him. The path ahead was his to choose, and Marcus resolved to make that decision on his own terms. A quiet statement. Instead of responding to Howard's overtures, Marcus made a quiet but powerful statement. He announced a new exhibit titled "Breaking Barriers" at an up-and-coming gallery run by a collective of diverse artists. The exhibit featured pieces that told his story, his struggles, his victories, and the ongoing fight for equity in the art world. The opening night was a resounding success, attended by critics, collectors, and fellow artists. The crowd buzzed with admiration as they explored Marcus's work. Among them was Emily Carter, who smiled proudly from the back of the room. Meanwhile, across town, Howard Livingston sat in his empty gallery, scrolling through photos of Marcus's event on social media. His face was a mixture of regret and realization. For the first time, he understood the magnitude of the opportunity he had squandered. As Marcus greeted attendees at his exhibit, he felt a profound sense of peace. He had risen above the hate, the doubt, and the prejudice. And while the world clamored for his attention, Marcus knew his greatest achievement was staying true to himself. The rise to stardom had brought Marcus full circle. He had turned rejection into inspiration, pain into purpose, and now, he was ready to chart a course that would inspire others to do the same. The artist who once stood in the shadows was now shining brighter than ever, a testament to the ultimate revenge. A bold move. The opportunity presented itself in the most unexpected way. While Marcus was preparing for yet another major exhibit, his agent, Robert Hayes, brought him news that stopped him in his tracks. "Howard Livingston's gallery is in serious financial trouble," Robert said, sliding a folder across the table. "It seems his outdated practices and failure to adapt have caught up with him. He's trying to sell." Marcus stared at the folder, feeling a rush of emotions, vindication, anger, and a spark of opportunity. The gallery that had once rejected him, the man who had humiliated him, was now desperate to keep afloat. Marcus's immediate thought was to dismiss the idea of getting involved. He had moved on, hadn't he? But then an idea began to form. What if he could do more than simply prove Howard wrong? What if he could take the very space that had symbolized exclusion and turn it into a beacon of inclusivity and talent? "I want it," Marcus said after a moment of silence. "But Howard can't know it's me." "Not yet." Robert raised an eyebrow, but nodded. "We'll use a proxy to handle the purchase." This could be the ultimate full-circle moment, Marcus. With Robert's expertise and a carefully crafted plan, Marcus's team worked in secret to acquire Livingston Gallery. The negotiations were swift. Howard was too desperate to haggle over the details. Within weeks, the gallery that had once been a fortress of gatekeeping now belonged to the very artist it had rejected. Marcus spent the following months overseeing renovations and rebranding efforts, all while maintaining a facade of distance. The gallery was transformed into a modern, welcoming space, complete with a new name, Ellis Contemporary. Marcus envisioned it as a platform for underrepresented artists, a place where voices like his own could flourish. The big reveal. The grand reopening of Ellis Contemporary was a night to remember. Invitations went out to some of the most influential names in the art world, as well as local community leaders and emerging artists. The guest list included high-profile collectors, critics, and even former patrons of Howard's gallery. But one invitation stood out, a personal one sent to Howard Livingston himself. Howard arrived at the event with a mix of curiosity and bitterness. The gallery he had built was under new ownership, and he couldn't resist the temptation to see who had taken over. As he stepped inside, he was immediately struck by how unrecognizable the space was. The cold, austere atmosphere he had cultivated was gone, replaced by warmth, vibrancy, and a palpable sense of purpose. Power of resilience and authenticity. The walls were adorned with stunning works from a diverse range of artists, including several pieces by Marcus Ellis. The centerpiece of the exhibit was Fragmented Freedom, the very painting Howard had once dismissed as unsellable. A large crowd gathered around it, admiring its depth and complexity. As Howard moved through the gallery, he began to piece together the truth. Whispers among the guests confirmed his suspicions. Marcus Ellis was not just the star of the exhibit, he was the new owner. Howard's face turned pale as he spotted Marcus across the room, surrounded by admirers. Marcus caught his eye and, with a confident smile, made his way over. "Howard," Marcus said, extending a hand. "Welcome to Ellis Contemporary. I trust you're enjoying the evening?" Howard hesitated, his hand hovering uncertainly before he shook Marcus's. This is your gallery?" he stammered. "It is," Marcus replied, his tone calm but firm. "I thought it was time to give this space a new direction. One that celebrates talent, diversity, and innovation." Howard opened his mouth to respond but found himself at a loss for words. The weight of his earlier actions, and the irony of the situation, was not lost on him. Karma's payback. The night only grew more surreal for Howard. As the event continued, Marcus took the stage to deliver a speech. The room fell silent as he began. "Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight at the grand reopening of what is now Ellis Contemporary. This gallery has a history, one that I'm intimately familiar with. It was once a place where doors were closed to artists like me, where voices like mine were dismissed. But tonight, we change that." The audience erupted in applause, but Marcus held up a hand, signaling them to quiet down. "This isn't just about me," he continued. "It's about every artist who has ever been told they're not enough. It's about creating a space where stories, perspectives, and talents from all walks of life can be celebrated. I want this gallery to stand as a testament to resilience, to the power of believing in yourself even when others don't." As Marcus stepped down, the applause was deafening. Howard stood in the corner, his head bowed in shame. The man who had once wielded power over others was now a spectator in a world he no longer controlled. Later that evening, Marcus approached Howard again. "You could have been part of this, you know," he said, his tone measured but pointed. "You had the chance to uplift others, but you chose to tear them down. Maybe now you'll understand the value of humility." Howard nodded, his voice barely a whisper. "I was wrong, Marcus. About you, about everything." Marcus studied him for a moment before replying. "I'm not looking for an apology, Howard. I just hope you learn from this." A new chapter. The reopening of Ellis Contemporary was not just a triumph for Marcus, it was a turning point for the art world. The gallery quickly gained a reputation as a hub for groundbreaking, inclusive art. Emerging artists found a champion in Marcus, who used his platform to amplify their voices. For Howard, the experience was humbling. He faded from the spotlight, choosing to focus on smaller, community-based projects in an attempt to rebuild his reputation. Whether his transformation was genuine or born of necessity, Marcus chose not to dwell on it. His focus remained on the future. The ultimate revenge wasn't just taking over Howard's gallery, it was transforming it into something far greater than it had ever been. Marcus Ellis had turned rejection into inspiration, pain into purpose, and exclusion into empowerment. And in doing so, he proved that success was the best response to prejudice. A legacy of change. Empowering others. With Ellis' contemporary thriving, Marcus Ellis turned his attention to the gallery's true purpose, creating a platform for underrepresented artists. From the beginning, Marcus had envisioned the gallery as more than just a showcase for art. It was to be a space where stories were shared, voices amplified, and barriers shattered. Marcus and his team launched the Art for All initiative, a program designed to identify and support emerging artists from marginalized backgrounds. Through this initiative, the gallery hosted workshops, mentorship programs, and open calls for submissions, ensuring that talented artists who lacked access to traditional networks could find a place to grow and thrive. One of the gallery's first exhibitions under the initiative featured artists from diverse communities, each one bringing their unique perspectives to life on canvas. The show, titled Unseen Narratives, was a resounding success. Critics praised its bold curation, and visitors marveled at the range of voices on display. Marcus made it a point to be personally involved in the selection process, often visiting schools, community centers, and local art collectives to find talent. He saw himself in these young artists, the same hunger, the same fire, and he was determined to help them avoid the struggles he had endured. The gallery also began offering scholarships for art students, funded by the proceeds from Marcus's own work. "This isn't just about art," Marcus told a group of scholarship recipients during an awards ceremony. "It's about creating opportunities, about opening doors that were once locked. You all have something valuable to say, and the world needs to hear it." Reflection and growth. Despite the gallery's success and Marcus's growing influence, one piece of unfinished business lingered in his mind: Howard Livingston. Their paths had crossed only once since the gallery's reopening, and though Marcus had confronted him that night, he couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to be said. One quiet afternoon, Marcus decided to visit Howard. He learned that Howard had moved out of his lavish penthouse and was now living in a modest apartment in the suburbs. When Marcus knocked on the door, Howard answered, looking older and wearier than Marcus remembered. "Marcus," Howard said, surprised. "I didn't expect to see you." "I wanted to talk," Marcus replied. "Do you have a moment?" Howard stepped aside, inviting Marcus in. The apartment was sparse, its walls bare of the art that had once defined Howard's life. They sat at a small kitchen table, the tension between them palpable. "I've had a lot of time to think," Howard began, breaking the silence. "About the way I treated you, the way I treated so many people. I was wrong, Marcus. Not just about you, but about the way I viewed the world. I let my arrogance blind me." Marcus studied him, searching for sincerity. "Do you really understand what you did, Howard? You didn't just dismiss my work, you dismissed me. You made me feel like I didn't belong." Howard nodded, his eyes downcast. "I know. And I can't undo what I've done, but I want you to know that I regret it deeply. Losing the gallery was humbling, but seeing what you've done with it, it's inspiring." For a long moment, Marcus said nothing. Then he spoke, his tone calm but firm. "I didn't come here for an apology. I came here to tell you that I've moved on. I built something better, not because of you, but in spite of you. And I hope you've learned that the art world, like life, is bigger than any one person." Howard nodded again, a single tear slipping down his cheek. "Thank you, Marcus. For your forgiveness, and for what you're doing. You're making the world a better place." As Marcus left, he felt a weight lift from his shoulders. Confronting Howard hadn't been about revenge or validation, it had been about closure. And now, finally, he could focus fully on the future. Final triumph. Marcus's influence continued to grow, both as an artist and as an advocate for diversity in the art world. His gallery became a cultural landmark, its exhibits celebrated for their boldness and inclusivity. Emerging artists whose work had been featured at Ellis Contemporary began gaining recognition on national and international stages, crediting Marcus for giving them their first break. Marcus also used his platform to push for systemic change in the art industry. He partnered with organizations to develop equitable hiring practices in galleries and museums, and worked to increase representation in art education. He became a sought-after speaker, delivering powerful talks about the intersection of art, identity, and social justice. His personal art also continued to captivate audiences. A new series, titled Legacy and Light, explored themes of resilience, forgiveness, and transformation. The centerpiece, a massive mural displayed at the gallery, depicted a phoenix rising from the ashes, its wings composed of vibrant, interwoven stories. In time, Marcus's name became synonymous with change. He was not just a celebrated artist, he was a movement, a force that inspired countless others to challenge the status quo. Years later, at the unveiling of a public art installation he had commissioned in his old neighborhood, Marcus stood before a crowd of children, parents, and community leaders. The installation, a towering sculpture of intertwined hands, symbolized unity and shared purpose. "This is for all of us," Marcus said, his voice filled with emotion. "For everyone who dreams, who struggles, who creates. Art has the power to change lives, it changed mine. And now, it's our turn to change the world." As the crowd erupted in applause, Marcus looked out over the faces before him. He saw hope, determination, and the beginnings of countless stories yet to be told. His legacy was secure, not in the accolades or the wealth, but in the lives he had touched and the barriers he had broken. Marcus Ellis had become more than an artist, he was a symbol of what was possible when talent met resilience, when pain gave way to purpose, and when one person dared to believe in the transformative power of art.